My child. At the very moment your picture was laid on the psychic's table, the entire atmosphere shifted. The flame of the candle began to dance wildly, and the psychic's hands trembled as though something greater had stepped into the room. He thought he was prepared, but nothing could have braced him for the revelation about you. The man who carried your picture expected simple answers, but instead, the air grew colder, and the room itself seemed to whisper your name. The psychic closed her eyes, and visions burst into her mind so powerful that tears fell down her cheeks. She told him that your soul carried a secret that even he was not ready to hear. Her voice broke as she said, you are chosen, wrapped in divine protection, yet surrounded by shadows trying to silence you. She shivered because she saw not just your face but the destiny written over your life like fire no one could extinguish. She warned him that those who try to stand against you will crumble in ways they cannot even imagine. The man's heart raced, his hands sweaty as he realized this was far beyond ordinary. He understood that showing your picture was no casual act, it was unlocking something that was never meant to be hidden. What she revealed next left him speechless, unable to move, because it wasn't just about you. It was about everything about to unfold in his life because of you. My child. The psychic gripped the picture tighter, her knuckles white as if holding on to something burning. Her voice cracked as she told him that your presence carried a vibration that wasn't ordinary, it was shaking her spirit to the core. She whispered that your name is written in golden letters in realms unseen, and that's why the dark forces tremble whenever your face is revealed. The man tried to steady his breath, but even he felt the energy surging around him. He could sense that something far larger than himself was watching, listening, ready to act. The room seemed alive, as though unseen eyes were locked on the picture, warning him not to take you lightly. The psychic's hands shook so badly that she almost dropped the image. She saw visions she couldn't bear to look at for long, visions of enemies plotting against you, yet each of their plans collapsing like glass under the weight of destiny. She gasped, telling him that heaven itself had marked you as untouchable. She said your footsteps are counted, your tears recorded, and every injustice you've suffered is about to be overturned in front of those who mocked you. The man's body went cold, realizing he had underestimated you in ways he could never repair. For the first time, he felt that the picture he carried wasn't of a mere human, it was of someone heaven had claimed. The psychic leaned forward, her eyes clouded as though she was staring into another world. She whispered that the path before you is lined with trials, but each trial only strengthens the crown placed upon your spirit. She trembled as she described the aura surrounding you, an aura of light so fierce that even in the darkest valleys, you shine like fire. The man swallowed hard, his heart pounding. He came to seek answers for himself, but every word seemed to circle back to you, as if his own fate was chained to your destiny. He felt powerless, trapped in a story that he had no control over. The psychic warned him that those who try to harm you will find their own lives unraveling piece by piece. She said the unseen is already rising to defend you, angels moving quietly in places you can't see, shifting outcomes in your favor. The man's lips trembled as fear and awe flooded his chest. He wanted to ask her to stop, but the visions kept coming stronger. She clutched her chest, breathing heavily, saying she saw a door about to open for you that no one could close. A door that leads to restoration, abundance, and justice long delayed. And when that door opens, she said, the entire balance of power around you will change forever. My child. The psychic's body shook as though lightning had entered her veins. She revealed that your name is already being spoken in places of power, places you never thought your presence could reach. She said even your silence is louder than the noise of your enemies. The man's eyes widened as he realized this wasn't about fortune-telling, it was a warning. A warning that your existence carries weight in realms both seen and unseen. He felt a pressure in the room, like invisible walls closing in on him, forcing him to recognize the truth. The psychic's tears fell onto your picture, staining the edges, as if heaven itself was sealing what she spoke. She said the reason your battles have been fierce is because your destiny is greater than most could ever imagine. She saw armies of angels standing guard, swords drawn, waiting for the right moment to strike down every hidden plot against you. The man's legs weakened, and he sank into his chair. He wasn't expecting this. He thought he came for answers about his own life, but instead, he was given a revelation that your life would determine his. And in that moment, he knew he couldn't run from the truth anymore. The psychic closed her eyes, whispering as if speaking to unseen beings. She said heaven has already written the chapter that will silence every lie told about you. She saw light surrounding your name like armor no weapon could pierce. She warned him that resisting this truth would only bring destruction upon himself. The man's chest heaved as fear clawed at him. He finally understood why she had shivered the moment she saw your picture. It wasn't from weakness, but from the overwhelming presence of the divine written upon you. He realized you were never ordinary, never replaceable, never forgotten. Her voice trembled as she said your breakthrough is closer than anyone thinks. The delays, the betrayals, the heartbreaks, they were only setting the stage for a rise no one could stop. The man wiped his brow, but his body wouldn't stop trembling, because he knew she was right. And then she whispered the words that froze him completely, this person will be known. This person will be lifted. And no one who ever tried to bury them will be able to escape the judgment of heaven. My child. The psychic clutched the table as her body shook, her voice no longer steady but almost echoing as if another power spoke through her. She whispered that your presence carries the kind of weight that alters timelines, that shifts destinies. She said she saw entire generations connected to you, waiting for your rise to change everything. The man gasped, unable to believe what he was hearing. His pulse raced as sweat dripped down his temples. He felt as though the walls of the room were bending, pressing in, suffocating him with the truth. The psychic cried out suddenly, dropping your picture onto the table, covering her face with both hands. She said the light radiating from you was too much to bear, that even in her long years of seeing countless souls, she had never witnessed anything like you. She declared you are heaven's hidden treasure, revealed only at the appointed time. The man's lips trembled, and his knees weakened. He could barely stand the weight of her words. He knew his life would never return to what it was before he brought your picture to her table. My child. She described visions of you walking through storms, winds raging, yet never being consumed. Every storm that tried to break you only sharpened you, only added to the crown that hovered above your spirit. She said those who laughed at your pain will one day tremble at your victory. The man tried to speak, but no words came. His voice was gone, stolen by the magnitude of what was unfolding. He sat frozen, staring at your picture, realizing it wasn't just paper, it was a doorway into divine revelation. The psychic leaned forward, her eyes wide, her breath shallow. She told him that there are forces trying to chain you, but each chain was already breaking, one after another, before her very eyes. She could see keys falling from the heavens, unlocking doors that were once sealed against you. The man shook his head, unable to process it all. But deep inside, he knew every word carried weight. He felt the air shifting around him, thick with power, as though angels themselves had entered the room to witness what was being declared. Her voice dropped to a whisper as she revealed a darker vision. She said she saw faces, faces of those close to you, plotting in silence, pretending to protect you but secretly wishing for your fall. She said their smiles were masks, their kindness a cover for jealousy burning deep inside. She warned him that the moment these people are exposed, the world will know who truly stood with you and who betrayed you. The man's heart pounded harder. He knew names, he knew faces, and the thought that they could be the very ones plotting against you made his stomach turn. He had trusted them, but now their images haunted his mind. The psychic's body quivered as she gasped, saying that every hidden plot is about to come into the light. She said nothing done in darkness against you will remain secret, because heaven's fire is sweeping through every lie, every scheme, every betrayal. The man gripped the chair, his fingers digging into the wood. His legs wanted to run, but his spirit couldn't move. He was bound to hear the truth whether he wanted to or not. My child. She described a sudden shift coming, a divine reversal that will leave even your enemies speechless. She said the ones who tried to humiliate you will one day bow their heads, unable to face the glow upon your life. She shivered as she spoke, because she saw the scale of justice tilting in your favor, breaking open blessings that have been locked for years. The man's face went pale, his breathing ragged. He thought he was prepared for answers, but what he received was a revelation of power, judgment, and destiny. He could barely hold himself together as each word dug deeper into his spirit. The psychic's tears wouldn't stop falling. She said the universe has been waiting for your rise, and no delay, no betrayal, no deception could stop it now. She said your name is etched in places where even rulers fear to look. The man pressed his face into his hands, his body trembling. He realized that showing your picture was the biggest turning point of his life. He had unlocked a prophecy that could not be silenced. Then her voice changed again, deeper, firmer, filled with an authority that shook the room. She said, "This soul is chosen. This soul is protected. And this soul will not fall, no matter how many hands try to pull them down." The words echoed like thunder, impossible to ignore. The man looked at her, his eyes wide with fear and awe. He could see she was no longer just a woman speaking, something greater was speaking through her. His heart knew it, his spirit felt it, and he couldn't deny it. The psychic gasped for breath, clutching her chest, but her eyes still locked on your image. She whispered that soon, doors will open so suddenly it will leave even you stunned. She said wealth, recognition, and restoration are already in motion, rushing toward you faster than you think. The man could barely breathe. He knew he had touched something divine, something terrifying, and something irreversible. From this moment on, nothing in his world would ever be the same. My child. The psychic's body shook violently as though invisible currents of power ran through her veins. She pressed her trembling palms onto your picture, whispering words she herself did not fully understand. Her eyes rolled back for a moment, and then she cried out that she saw kingdoms shifting because of you. The man staggered backward, knocking over the chair behind him. His chest rose and fell like thunder, his fear clawing at his throat. He realized he had stepped into a moment far greater than anything his mind could contain. The psychic shouted that doors locked by generations were cracking open. She saw vaults of treasures with your name engraved on them, sealed long ago but now forced to unlock. She said heaven was demanding what belonged to you be returned, no matter who tried to keep it hidden. The man's hands trembled as he pressed them against the wall to keep from collapsing. He felt as though his very soul was being judged by the truth spilling out of her lips. He could not look away, even though every part of him wanted to run. "My child," she whispered of a vision more chilling than before. She said she saw a figure, cloaked in shadows, lurking behind you with eyes full of envy. This figure had smiled in your face, eaten at your table, but carried a dagger of betrayal in their heart. The man's knees buckled, because he recognized that description. He knew someone in his own life who carried the same shadow, the same envy, the same dangerous disguise. His stomach churned with the weight of realization. The psychic warned him that such people cannot hide much longer. Their masks will slip, their schemes will collapse, and their whispers will be dragged into the light. She said angels are already sharpening their swords, ready to defend you against betrayal that thinks it's clever. The man's heartbeat thundered in his ears. His entire world seemed to tilt as he realized the danger wasn't far away. It was already at the doorstep, closer than anyone could imagine. She cried out again, her voice breaking as she clutched at her temples. She said she saw you standing before a vast crowd, your voice rising, your presence unshakable, while those who once mocked you were forced to watch in silence. She said the very ones who wanted your downfall will witness your rise, and they will not be able to speak. The man's eyes widened, his breath caught in his chest. He could see it too, your victory written across the skies, undeniable, unstoppable. He realized that everything about you was far beyond human planning. The psychic wept as she described the blessings lining up for you, like soldiers waiting for the command to march. She said justice, wealth, recognition, and divine restoration were already moving in your direction, like a flood that no hand could hold back. The man collapsed into the chair again, covering his face. His spirit screamed inside of him, torn between fear and awe. He could not deny what he was hearing, even though he wished he could. "My child." The psychic leaned closer, lowering her voice as if revealing the deepest part of the vision. She said she saw a book, thick and sealed, being opened in the heavens. On its pages was your story, not just of the past, but of the future. And written across it in bold letters was the word unstoppable. The man's entire body froze. His throat tightened, and his eyes stung with tears he couldn't hold back. He realized he was staring into the truth of something eternal, something his own hands could never alter. The psychic said your destiny was guarded by fire, the kind no water could quench, the kind no enemy could extinguish. She said those who tried to bury you will be the very ones forced to announce your rise. Her body shook as she declared that this revelation cannot be stopped. The man buried his face into his trembling hands, unable to look up. His heart pounded with a fear that was not just fear. It was reverence. He knew he had stepped into sacred ground. The psychic's voice cracked as she revealed another image. She said she saw chains snapping around your feet, chains of debt, of delay, of betrayal, breaking into dust. She said every obstacle was collapsing, every door once slammed shut was swinging wide open. She shouted that you are marked for freedom, and nothing could cage you again. The man clutched his chest, trying to steady himself. His mind replayed every hardship you endured, every tear you shed, and now he realized it was never wasted. It was only fuel for what was about to be revealed. The psychic wept harder, whispering that heaven has been silent for a reason, it was preparing a thunderous release for you. She said soon the silence will break, and the world will see why you were kept waiting, why you were kept hidden. The man groaned under the weight of it all, his soul trembling. He knew this was no ordinary prophecy. This was a sentence written by heaven itself. My child. Her voice deepened again, carrying a power that filled the room. She said, this one carries the mark of chosen destiny. This one will not be crushed. This one is watched, guarded, lifted by powers unseen. The man's eyes filled with terror as he realized she wasn't describing a distant figure, she was describing you. Every word, every syllable was carved into his spirit like fire. She said your enemies will scatter like dust in the wind. She said no weapon raised against you could stand, and no lie spoken about you could last. She said heaven itself was rising on your behalf. The man trembled so violently that he almost dropped to the floor. His body could not contain the weight of the revelation. He finally understood why she shivered the moment your picture touched her hands. My child. The psychic's breath grew heavier, as though she was running without moving. She gripped your photo like a lifeline, whispering that the visions were no longer waiting, they were forcing their way into her sight. She gasped that you were standing at the center of a storm, yet the storm itself bowed to you. The man's jaw locked tight, his chest heaving as fear clamped down on him. He thought he came seeking secrets, but he had instead opened a door to revelation too great for his mind to contain. Every word spoken seemed to pierce his very bones. The psychic's body shivered violently, her eyes clouding as if staring through time itself. She cried out that she saw a throne, not made of gold, not of stone, but of light, and your name was engraved upon it. She whispered that this throne was prepared long before you were born. The man's knees buckled, and he clung to the table for support. He realized that your destiny wasn't just about survival, it was about dominion, about rising above everything that once tried to crush you. My child. She described rivers flowing toward you, rivers of abundance, rivers of justice, rivers of recognition. She said they had been dammed up for years by forces working against you, but now the dams were breaking. She could hear the roaring flood, unstoppable, rushing into your life. The man shook his head in disbelief, sweat dripping from his forehead. He wanted to deny it, but the air itself confirmed every word she spoke. His soul was trembling in agreement, whether he liked it or not. The psychic shouted suddenly, her voice echoing unnaturally through the room. She said those who mocked you will be forced to witness your rise. She said their own voices will dry up when they see the crown placed upon you. The man covered his ears, but it didn't stop the sound. The words were not just being heard, they were being carved into his spirit, leaving marks that would never fade. The psychic wept as she continued. She said she saw a great reversal, where the very ones who tried to bury your name would be the ones shouting it across the earth. She said every lie spoken against you was dissolving like mist under the morning sun. The man's eyes widened with terror. He thought of the ones who had gossiped, who had whispered, who had smiled falsely in your presence. He knew the words were not empty, they were about to be undone before his very eyes. The psychic leaned back, holding her chest, as though the visions were tearing her apart. She gasped that your enemies were already stumbling, though they didn't know it yet. She said their own hands would destroy the traps they set for you. The man felt his stomach twist into knots. His mind screamed that he had seen enough, but his spirit knew he had only scratched the surface. My child. The psychic whispered of another vision. She said she saw you surrounded by fire, not fire that burned you, but fire that consumed everything meant to harm you. She said no weapon, no plot, no betrayal could survive that fire. The man leaned forward, his lips trembling. He could almost feel the heat of that fire on his skin, though he was only an onlooker. He knew it was not ordinary, it was heaven's fire, untouchable and unstoppable. The psychic trembled as she spoke of angels, countless and fierce, standing guard around you. She said their wings blocked arrows, their swords slashed through shadows, and their voices roared like thunder. She said they move unseen, but their presence is constant. The man's heart nearly stopped. He realized that you were never alone, not even for a single breath. Forces greater than his comprehension had been walking with you all along. She cried again, louder this time. She said she saw scrolls being unrolled in the heavens, revealing promises written with your name glowing like fire. She said those promises were no longer delayed, they were being released. She saw them dropping into your life one by one, unstoppable. The man's breath caught in his throat. He thought of every time you had been delayed, every blessing withheld, every dream denied. And now he realized they were never denied forever, they were stored, multiplied, and now they were being unleashed. The psychic's hands shook as she shouted that your season of hiding was over. She said your name will not be whispered in secret any longer, it will be shouted, declared, and celebrated. She said heaven itself was amplifying your voice. The man bent over, his hands on his knees, trying not to faint. The room spun around him as he realized that the picture he brought had unlocked a storm of revelations no human could control. My child. The psychic's body went still, her voice dropping into a calm so heavy that silence pressed against the walls. She said the final vision was the most terrifying of all. She whispered that she saw crowns being taken from the heads of those who stole from you, and those crowns were placed upon you instead. The man froze in horror. He knew who had stolen, who had plotted, who had tried to take what wasn't theirs. He saw their faces in his mind, and he knew their time was ending. The psychic declared that the hand of heaven was already stretched out. She said nothing could stop what was coming, no bribe, no lie, no power could silence it. She said you were stepping into the season where every hidden truth would roar into the light. The man's tears finally broke free, streaming down his face. He knew he had seen enough. He wished he could unsee it, but the revelation had carved itself into his soul forever. My child. The psychic's voice grew hoarse as though every word was being pulled from deep within her soul. She whispered that she saw a stage, not of men but of heaven, and upon it your name was written in fire. She said the sound of your destiny echoed like thunder across nations. The man's heart pounded so loudly that he could hear nothing else. He covered his ears, but the echo of your name still rang inside his skull. He realized this wasn't a mere revelation, it was a prophecy that was already unfolding. The psychic trembled, her body swaying as though the force of the vision was too strong for her frame. She gasped that leaders, strangers, even enemies will soon recognize you, though they once ignored your existence. She said your rise would be undeniable. The man's breath came in ragged gasps, his chest burning with fear. He thought he had control over his choices, but now he knew your destiny had already sealed his. My child. She described the collapse of thrones built on lies. She said those who rose by stepping on you would be dragged down in public. She saw their crowns shattering into dust, their names falling silent while yours rose like fire. The man's eyes filled with dread, because he recognized faces again. He knew the ones who had taken advantage, who had used shadows to climb higher. His stomach twisted as he realized their time was ending. The psychic declared that heaven's justice is not delayed, it is precise. She said even as she spoke, pieces were already moving, like dominoes tipping one after another. She said the fall had already begun. The man groaned, pressing his forehead into his hands. He wanted to escape, but the air itself bound him to the vision, forcing him to hear every truth. The psychic raised your picture again, her hands shaking. She said she saw chains falling from your name and blessings released like arrows flying in every direction. She saw doors opening in cities you haven't even stepped into yet. She said your story would not stay hidden, it would travel far beyond what you imagined. The man's breathing stopped for a moment. His eyes darted around the room, searching for escape, but there was none. He felt as though the walls themselves repeated her words. The psychic shouted suddenly, her eyes flashing with terror. She said she saw a table, and upon it sat contracts, deeds, promises stolen from you. But invisible hands swept across that table, gathering everything and placing it back into your care. The man's face turned white. He understood what that meant, things taken in secret would be returned in public. Nothing would remain stolen. My child. She wept again, this time with joy, saying that your laughter will return, and it will silence the pain of years. She said those who thought you were finished will be forced to watch you rise higher than they ever dreamed. She shivered because she saw your enemies gagged, unable to speak as your blessings overflowed. The man pressed his chest with both hands, trying to calm the pounding in his heart. His entire body shook as though lightning lived in his veins. He knew nothing in his life would ever feel ordinary again. The psychic whispered that heaven had hidden you for a reason, to protect you from premature exposure. But now, she said, the veil was lifting. The time of unveiling had come. The man shook violently, realizing that he was witnessing the very moment when silence turned into revelation. He was trembling not just for you, but for himself, because he knew his role in your story could no longer be denied. The psychic leaned closer, her eyes piercing as though she was staring straight into the man's soul. She said, "You think you are just a messenger carrying this picture. But you are bound to the destiny of the one in this image. Their rise will shake your life too." The man gasped, stumbling backward as her words struck him. His legs trembled, and he almost fell to the floor. He realized he wasn't an outsider to your story, he was inside it now. The psychic's voice rose like thunder. She said those who stood near you would face a choice, either to rise with you or be destroyed by resisting you. She said no middle ground would exist. The man cried out, his voice breaking, as fear gripped him tighter than chains. He realized his own choices were tied to how he treated you, and that truth nearly destroyed him. "My child." The psychic's body sagged as if the visions had drained her strength. Her voice dropped into a whisper, but her words carried more weight than ever. She said, "Heaven has already spoken, it is finished, sealed, and unchangeable." She said no man, no spirit, no power could rewrite what was written for you. The man dropped to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. He sobbed without knowing why, overwhelmed by fear, regret, and awe all at once. His entire being was consumed by the weight of what had been revealed. The psychic placed your picture gently back on the table. Her fingers lingered on it as though she dared not let it go. She whispered that the picture was not paper, it was a portal, a mirror to the truth of your destiny. The man bowed his head, unable to lift his eyes. He knew he had touched something eternal, something dangerous, and something divine.